I like how that I don't know, I'm so much into cars and we're on a drive that like I love how that story is glossed over.
Hmm.
How he has so much money and influence that he can illegally import things.
That's actually kind of
Think
crazy when you
about
think
that.
about it.
If I said, "Yeah, I'm going to illegally import something,"
Yeah, we're just gonna import cocaine. Like,
yeah, just and it could be anything
yeah,
because you know that it doesn't matter what was in that crate. They didn't check it because if they did, they would have denied it. You know what I mean? Like it's
I
very obvious that he's illegally importing something.
well, I'm gonna hold back on how far we could take this illegal importation joke because he is going through some shit with a
Sure,
famous guy named Epstein right now,
but you can see the
who also
infrastructure laid in the '80s.
and for oh, I can import what I want, and I can move
Exactly.
things what I want
It's such a
without.
glossed over story,
Yeah,
but
I
that's a
mean,
lot of influence, all that connections. You pay off the right people. Don't look in that crate. Could be anything in that crate.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
And I
that's
mean,
just something that I wanted to key in on.
no, I think it's important to key in on that, and I think it's like when you get to that altitude, you have to be very cognizant of your actions because
All right, we're back.
back again with another Founders Drive.
Founders Drive.
Back again with another Founders Drive. Back again with another. All right, we are here, man. And we
Yeah.
are going in to the mind of Bill Gates.
Yes.
The business mind, guys. The business mind.
Which is, most people know who Bill Gates is.
Yeah, I mean, he's been around for a while, the founder of Microsoft, and now he's doing Gates with in philanthropy,
Mm-hmm.
and
A
that's
lot
what
of
he's done in his
philanthropy.
life. Yes, but I think like this episode, rather than going into his career trajectory, of course, I'm sure we'll touch on it and use
Mhm.
that as a scaffold. I'm really interested to examine, his business practices, the way he thought about business, what drove him,
Yeah.
and then compare that against other founders and what makes him successful versus what was just his personality. Because I think there's a lot of ways that he conducted himself that were not
Very interesting.
necessary.
Yes.
And yeah, so I think let's kind of start back in his childhood.
Yeah, he was introduced to computers at a very young age.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was, around 13. He started even like programming. So, it's like that's the kind of exposure specifically in those early years
Mm-hmm.
that not a lot of people had access to
Yeah.
even even a computer the size of a classroom,
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't even get access to. You'd have to be on like one of these elite college campuses
Yeah.
or, be in extremely privileged circumstances. And he went to that one private school as a very young kid.
Mm-hmm.
You know
Yeah.
the name of that?
Lakeview.
Lakeview,
Yeah.
yes.
So he was born in 1955 in
Right.
Seattle, Washington, and his dad was William Henry Gates II, Bill Gates Sr., and his mother, Mary Maxwell Gates. She was a school teacher turned civic leader, and she was the first woman on the board of First Interstate Bank. She served on the board of directors for several companies, including the first interstate bank system, and they were in the upper class of their area. Bill was had an older sister and he had a younger sister,
Mm-hmm.
and of course he was the third. He grew up in a pretty privileged neighborhood. The family was deeply embedded in the whole, the civic and business elite, and this is really important because this basically set up his first few experiences, like you were talking about,
Yeah.
where he was able to get into the access to early computers, and he was able to make some connections that really took him to the next level. And so he he doesn't choose to hide this at all. He is pretty clear in saying that he was born rich and white in a time where it was an extreme advantage.
Yeah.
And he's not scared of leverage at all.
Mm-hmm.
And him recognizing that as an advantage is not to dismiss it. It's actually to something that he used as a lever to, propel him forward in his success.
I think we see that with like a lot of kids of rich famous people.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of judge them on a different scale because they have an advantage.
Yeah.
But sometimes they don't realize they have an advantage. They just think that, oh, this is just normal life.
Yeah.
And so it is interesting when you start comparing, how far they can take it given such a head start. I think obviously Bill is one of those cases where he just, took it all the way and shows you exactly how much you can do leveraging something like this.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of people that are born into this circumstance.
Yeah, I think the way that I look at it is, how far did you take the baton when you had it handed off to you? And that looks different for everybody.
Yeah.
But I think that's like the real measure of success. If you just look at it as absolute numbers, it's really hard to, it's really easy to look over the relative success that people have. But if you look at it as, okay, this is what I have, what did I do with it? It makes at least evens the playing field a little bit more.
A little bit more, but I would still say it's a little bit uneven, just because like now, especially if you're looking in the past, like now you have constants, and before you didn't.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit uneven.
Yeah.
But you can take the baton even farther now with the kind of tools we have with AI and all these fun things.
Yeah. Well, I think it's still going to be the thing that I think, self-promo outside. Of course, just look at the Founders Draft community, right?
Right.
But the main thing is, even in a world with AI, what I don't hear people talking about is the relative differences that we're still going to be having, and that's actually exacerbated relative to what it was in the past. So when you look at it, what I mean by that is people are saying, okay, now there's going to be a group of kids that can create $1 billion company in their dorm room.
Mm-hmm.
But the corporations are now operating at the $1 trillion level.
Right.
And so, yes, getting to that absolute number of $1 billion is way more attainable now, but it doesn't mean as much as it did in the past.
That's true.
And that matters. And I think that that's something that, people like him were aware of.
Yeah.
And that's a fundamental part, is just knowing how to apply that leverage to get the biggest gain that you can get.
Mm-hmm.
So, while he was pretty young, at 7 years old, he said that, hey, I want to read this whole world encyclopedia. And it just serves as a basis for his relationship with knowledge, his relationship with learning. He was a voracious reader.
Yeah.
And even to this day, he talks about taking retreats.
Reading retreats.
Yeah, where he's like, hey, I'm just going to bring this whole bag of books and I'm going to go and read. And he's known for carrying like 10 to 15 books with him at every time. He has this Bill Gates book club where he's, just constantly ingesting information. And that proved not only as a tangible benefit, but I think it also instilled confidence in his ability to organize his mind.
Ooh, that's interesting. Yeah, when you start taking in that much data, obviously somebody as smart as he is learning as he's doing it, not just the words on the page, but the way that people are structuring their arguments, the way that people are structuring their ideas, so that he can then do it himself.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Well, we had this discussion during one of our work sessions about smarts and working hard and what we mean by them, because I think a lot of times people conflate smarts with things that aren't really about smarts. It might be like how fast the engine is, or how fast the car is, I should say. But I look at it as something more directionally. Like, you can have a lot of horsepower, but for me to consider you smart, you have to be driving in the right direction. And so you can have somebody who has more horsepower, but because they're focusing on things that are irrelevant, or they're directionally not oriented, they're not really smart.
Because they're wasting time or not being efficient.
Yeah, but I think there's just the ability of to be aware of your situation and where to direct your intelligence. And so you'll see people that are very like, I can recite things, or I have a big memory bank, or I can, read quickly or process things really quickly, but they're not directionally oriented. And I think that you can make up for a lot of that horsepower. If you are aimed in the right direction. Kind of like the tortoise and the hare.
Interesting.
Yeah. But I do think that when you read a lot, like somebody like Bill Gates,
Yeah.
it gives you way more context, so that way you can take these mental shortcuts that other people aren't even aware exist.
That's interesting.
Just because you've learned the lay of the land.
Yeah, I feel like you do have somewhat of a moat if you are pointed in the right direction, but somebody with a lot of horsepower is going to catch up real fast. So you got to be very careful.
If they know where they're going, but
Exactly.
But I think what we end up finding is that, I mean, the humans didn't become the dominant species in the world by being the strongest or the smartest, or the strongest or the fastest.
Right.
We became that by being the smartest.
Mm-hmm.
We understood, oh, we can outwit that gorilla.
Sure.
Or that lion.
Mm-hmm.
By using our minds and organizing our minds better. And I think when you read a lot, you get more context for what's important and what's not in a given situation, and so you can make decisions much quicker.
Yeah, 100%. I like that. Yeah, decision making, and that's what you have to do, especially when you're a founder.
Oh, yeah.
It's just day after day of decision making.
No kidding, right? So I mean, yeah, that's all it's about.
Yeah.
So we have so he had a pretty competitive family growing up, and that is a core part of his personality just throughout his whole career.
Yeah.
We'll find out a little bit later that he, had the whole antitrust scandal or situation in the 90s or 2000, the antitrust lawsuit, the United States versus Microsoft. And it's largely because of his drive to compete and to play to all of his advantages. He excelled at Risk and Monopoly in those games earlier, which is no surprise. And that was a part of him that's a part that just shaped him at a really early age. It's his competitive drive, which is nurtured, but then also his appetite for information. And he was so adamant about doing what he wanted to do and being his own person. He got into a lot of fights with his mother. He got into they ended up taking him to a therapist at 11 before it was in vogue and before it was the cultural norm to be in therapy. But he was there, and the therapist was like, look, you're not going to win these fights with him. You got to let go and let him just be his own personality, which to me is a really interesting parallel with Steve Jobs, who also had his own formidable personality at a young age, if you want to call it that. And that served as a way to just assert yourself when you're the younger person in the room. And I think that's a really important thing to have. Maybe not to the degree that both of those guys had, because they didn't treat people in the way that they should be treating them at an early age, but they definitely developed the belief in themselves at an early age, and that was reinforced.
Yeah, especially nowadays. I mean, not even nowadays. I mean, pretty much anyone. If you are 11 years old, let's say, and you're in a room with an adult, you're going to defer to what the adult is saying and or thinking. And, it's not something where you're really... I mean, most 11-year-olds aren't going to stand their ground. Instead of it's, maybe throw a temper tantrum or something. But, to have the amount of wit around you and to be able to convey that to an adult, for them to say to your parent, yeah, you just have to kind of let it go.
Yeah.
That's another level. Yeah. That's not just like a bad behavior. Like that, I think that shows a level of IQ too, in terms of I don't know a lot of 11 or even 12-year-olds that can do that today.
Well, I also think part of it is the house you grow up in. There's a world where that happens and then you just get whooped. And and then true. They're like, you're gonna shut up. And I do think that, and this is again that sticking typically to the timeline, but something that keeps coming up with me is he was an intellectual bully. He was bigger than a lot of not only kids but adults intellectually, because he learned so much so early that he felt like he could walk circles around people and do what he wanted mentally. And so he would mentally berate people and attack people. And I think the thing that sticks out to me is that I think there's no question of Bill Gates's intellectual prowess, and I don't think that that's an issue at all. I think that it's something to admire how intellectually sound he was.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's a world where you can use that gift to build other people up and make other people around you better, rather than grinding them down and then berating them when they don't do what you want to do. I think there is a time to be, of course, stand your line. I'm by no means am I always, nice to people. But I think,
it's on camera.
But I think that the opposite of, I think that a space in between being nice or default polite,
right,
versus being mean and berating people to get the most out of them, is socially dumb. And I think that Bill Gates was socially dumb, and he was very, very in my opinion,
that
underdeveloped in
that,
where it's like, well, I would say that he had a degree of emotional intelligence, but not. That's another discussion. But I was gonna say it's like there's that kind of nuance where it's like, okay, how would I want it to be?
Sure.
I'm treated, and not just again in a catering way where you're like, oh no, like I'm gonna love you to the next until you learn this. But being in a space where it's like, okay, we're gonna make sure that you get better, and I'm not gonna just destroy you and railroad you. But that's just my opinion.
I think a lot of people would argue that that's not the best way to get that's not the way to get the best out of people.
What do you mean?
Berating them and stuff you might think you're getting the best out of them, but you're probably not.
Yeah.
And so
there's a world where
they even captain their potential there.
Yeah. There's a world where Microsoft was this successful in spite of Bill Gates, and that he actually could have been more successful had he been more.
Microsoft or Bill?
Both.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, both. I think that there's of course, I mean, let's not talk about
they've had a lot of success.
They're still successful. The company's still successful, moving in perpetuity right now.
Yeah.
But that is where I'm saying is that there's a world that it could be even more successful as a company had he been more developed with how he manages people. How Bill Gates is now with managing people, as opposed to 19 or 18-year-old.
Because he did learn. I think he learned a lot.
And I think he says as much too. Like, oh, okay, I probably wouldn't have been, done this, and this. But it's also the same evolution that I've seen with Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
And that Steve Jobs, when he was in his 20s, was not the same refined Steve Jobs when he was older.
Right.
I mean, Steve Jobs got kicked out of his company. So because people didn't like him. And it's like, well, if he was there the whole time and people were excited to come in there and be like, hey, we want to leave it all here, almost in a religious missionary manner, then
where would they be today?
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
So yeah, I mean, and that's again my perspective looking out on it. There's always more context that's left out of even the stories that are told.
Very true.
We're learning, right? This is just us learning about these founders and the way that they go. So my opinion might even change a little bit down the road, one way or the other. But I'm just going through it right now and thinking there are, just because somebody's successful monetarily does not mean that they have reached their potential. And let me give you another example. If he was a minority in the early 70s, 80s, same attitude, same level of intelligence, would he be able to get where he got to?
No.
If he was still white but poor and not located in Seattle, Washington, but same level of intelligence, would he still be able to pull off what he did acting the way he did? And personally, I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, there's a lot of stars that have to align for those things to all come together. The Paul Allen meeting, the IBM sale, there's a lot of things that have to come together.
Yeah.
That, I mean, not to say he didn't leverage the hell out of it, because he definitely did, but also, it's the combination of hard work and luck.
Yeah.
For me, it's like both of those came together, and we have Microsoft, which has been a powerhouse since it was founded.
Oh, of course.
I mean, it only took him 2 years or 3 years to become the world's richest person. When they started selling to IBM.
Yeah. So, in how they got there, so he ended up going to, when he was in high school, he ended up being part of this Lakeview Programmers Club, and at this point, he had already been programming for, I think, a couple years.
Yeah.
This is where he met Paul Allen, who was a couple years older than him. He met, I can't remember his name. It was Kent. Let me see this. Kent Evans, who was his best friend. He was his best friend at the time, and he was one of the first people who started criticizing his code, and he was like, "Oh, this guy might actually know something." And then they also met Rick Weiland, and they again started this computer club while they were there, and they discovered a nearby computer company, C Cubed Computer Center Corporation, and they had just leased a new mainframe, and this is where they spent a lot of time programming. They would sneak in there at nighttime, and programming was very different than it is today.
Punch cards and yes, old school.
Yeah, not vibe coding.
No, not at all.
But there was so much constraints, and this is another aspect of his personality that I think is really important, is learning how to operate under constraints. That's something that I think is missing today too.
I have a cool story about this, but yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just like operating under constraints. At a very young age, Bill liked to test those constraints.
Yeah.
And there's a story of him at a programming competition where he found out that you could tell the system clock that he still had more time left, and would continuously use that to get more time on the test and to score higher than the other participants, just by finding that flaw. And I believe it was something that once the manufacturer found out about it, they actually invited him to come work and find other bugs in their system. But it was one of those things where it's like every other participant was constrained by this time, and he was like, "Nah, I'm gonna find my way around that."
Yeah, I mean that's an early hack right there.
Yeah.
I've never heard that. So when they were there, find bugs in the software, and they'll give you free time. So they would find bugs in their software, they got free time, and they all took advantage of that. So while he was there, he got his first, opportunities to start writing code for the school there, and then later he got some opportunity to go and work in Seattle for a real hands-on project, doing some programming. Early on in his life, his friend Kent died, and then that really laid the foundation for the relationship between him and Paul Allen, which I mean is historic after that.
Yeah.
Of course, he went to Harvard, and he famously dropped out, and we don't have to go through all the details there. But
dropped out to start Microsoft.
Microsoft, and the person who really nudged him in that direction was Paul Allen.
Yeah.
Now, the whole Microsoft launch was, I think, of course, it showed the ability to step into the technology sector. But the real interesting thing was how they conducted it on a business dealings, where the Altair launched, and that was a rave for a whole bunch of people in the computing industry. But they realized that there was no software that was available for it. And so they called the manufacturers of the Altair and said, "Hey, we have some software for you." And they said, "All right, come down here and demo it in 8 weeks." And they said, "Oh, we don't have it."
Well, they didn't have it, but they didn't tell them that. Yeah, they were like, "Yeah, can you come demo it?" Yeah, we can come demo it. Sure, yeah. When would you like us to come demo it?
Yeah.
And I don't think they even had anything.
And so that put them in this mad rush to start writing this software. So they write it. Paul Allen gets on a flight down there. Famously, he realizes that they don't have the bootloader program, and so he writes it. Yeah. They go and demo it, and it works out perfectly.
Something here that is something we've talked about in other contexts with other founders, and also with some of the people that we talk to on a weekly basis, is being able to sell before you buy or build.
Sell before you build.
That's a very interesting concept that I've seen in today's startup world. People will tell you, build a list of people that are willing to give you money first, find out what they want to give you money for, and then go build that product because you already have customers for it. Essentially, that's what they were doing. Yeah. But I'm curious your thoughts on the build it first or sell it first model.
I don't think it's one way or the other.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's one way or the other. I think that there's a lot of success cases for building it. There's a lot of success cases for selling first and then delivering, and then vice versa. Oh, we have this thing and now we want to sell it. I think, of course, when you sell first, you get an idea of what the people actually want. If you have something you want to build or a service that you want to offer, then you can sell that first too.
Sure.
Or then you can build that first and define that first and sell it. But I think in all cases, you have to know what you actually want to be able to give.
Do you think
that's something that can elicit sales or elicit direction for what you actually end up wanting to build?
Just like as a quick side note, do you think it's immoral or unethical to sell something you don't currently have? I'm just curious on that one. Essentially, what they did, where they're like, yeah, we don't have anything.
If you don't have any inclination that you can deliver it, then
oh, okay. So as long as you have the potential to deliver it,
yeah, then that's then I'm like, yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah,
I like that.
Because I mean, and it also depends on the situation. If it's like if there's like a really serious thing and lives are going to be lost if you can't deliver this thing, you're like, yeah, I got it. That's a little bit different. But if it's something where, hey, we're bidding for this contract, okay, we have it, okay, yeah, come down here. If they didn't go, nothing would have happened.
Right.
They just would have lost out on an opportunity and would have lost their credibility. But they did rise to that occasion and they did follow through with it, and them being able to call their shot allowed them to, take it to that next level.
When it works out big.
Yeah. And I don't know how much they were in the, like, let me say this. If somebody says, hey, Jake, can you build this this platform or this scheduler in Golang or Rust, because like, I'm sure you've touched it, but you haven't like been active in there. In Rust, which these are the programming languages for this new artificial intelligence software that we're doing. Yeah,
I could do that, but I don't know if I would be confident enough to say, let me call a bunch of people and then pitch a Rust scheduler and say, hey, would you like to come see my Rust scheduler before I touch a line of code? Just personally, I like to be a little bit more informed on that stuff. But as the founder in me starts to, get shaped, I am finding myself more and more falling into I need to be more comfortable selling first.
I think it's what you sell, though. So giving some context, Bill Gates in the 70s or was this in the 60s? Was a
70s.
Yeah, so he was somebody who had been programming for 7 years. So he was one of the most, and Paul Allen were some of the most advanced programmers in the world. And they saw an opportunity to write to some hardware. And Paul Allen was also a hardware, savant himself. And so they saw that opportunity and they said, okay, we can go in, cash in on this opportunity. We feel confident that we can deliver because we've been doing this stuff for years already. We're some of the best people in the world and we know it. And we're also at Harvard right now, which is the cream of the crop intellectually, in a time where you don't have YouTube, you don't have all these other things. And so they're not worried about some other person who's learning on YouTube and watching tutorials and doing courses or webinars and all of that. They're like, no, we're just ahead of the game right now.
There's almost nobody that's even in their circle.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to find the other Ivy League schools with the people who have access to these computers that have been doing this for a decade at that point. And there's just not that many people in the world.
Yeah. Who are also at that young age. And I think they were both intelligent enough to know that and say, oh, okay, yeah, we can deliver it. And so I think the more interesting aspect of this, which isn't really highlighted, is the storytelling aspect of it. Where how they tell the story after. Because if you frame it one way, where you say, oh, they don't know anything. They saw this opportunity, they didn't know anything, and so they learned how to code in
you could say
8
that.
weeks.
I doubt it.
But no, I'm saying that's what the implication is when a lot of people hear that story.
Oh, you think so?
I think so.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are thinking like that these people, Bill Gates and Paul Allen saw the opportunity and they just jumped on a whim and they were like, yeah, we don't have this.
Duct taped it together.
Yeah.
And then, that's interesting.
But they weren't. They were some of the most advanced people
Yeah, to
and
tackle that.
experienced people, experienced programmers, to be able to look up the specs and be like, oh, okay, we kind of know what it is. We can write around it, and then we can just run it when we're there. It's still impressive.
That's the ambition,
because
yeah.
they ran it, and they saw that like it ran well the first time, and we know how terrible demos can go, especially when you don't have access to the actual to be able to actually run it and test it. But
I think it was something as simple as 2 + 2.
I think
that was their test or something like that.
I think I have the.
I think that's what Paul Allen said in his book. Was that they literally were like, the command that they wanted to show was like, you know, typing in 2 + 2, hitting enter, having it
memory.
think.
It goes to memory size ?
And then it just like puts out the number, and it's very interesting. But that also, this is a great jump off for their Microsoft business dealings.
Yeah. But just to bring that full circle, is that storytelling aspect of it, I think, is critically important, because again, if you get more context around this whole notion that they were really experienced and it changes slightly how the story is received. And the whole legend of delivering it in 8 weeks when you don't have it is a little bit more like you understand it a little bit more. And then on top of that, the mystique disappears
a little bit.
I feel, again, I still think it's impressive, but I think when you hear modern founders with that, some people will say, yes, we could do that, and they literally have no experience in what they're doing. They haven't been doing it for 10 years. They haven't been doing it, even like with something in AI.
That's something you got to be careful of.
It is something you have to be
careful.
A lot
of people will try and do that.
But so, for instance, we can say that roughly AI is a new industry, just like the personal computing industry was.
Right.
We were talking with our old colleague, Kevin Ramnath, recently.
Shout out.
And he works in AI, and he's just been talking about this. He's a consultant right now working with AI. And he's just been talking about how there's so many misconceptions about artificial intelligence out there, what you can and what you can't do, bringing a program into production, and how many people have a hard time doing it, and how hard it is for people to conceptualize what's possible because they've never actually created an algorithm from scratch, like from the logistic regression node, and built that up and then gone through the iterations of, okay, we're going from RNNs to CNNs to the LSTMs, or long-term, short-term, like all these different models, and then the evolution of it. And so there's an intuition that develops. So if somebody asks me about an AI project, I feel way more confident being able to deliver something without touching code yet and just being able to go through it in my mind than just because I've had experience.
Yeah.
And so you can tell that story of, he had experience, et cetera, but there's more than, I don't know, I think there's a couple different angles to that story that are important to note as entrepreneurs and as founders, because I think the story shapes how your product is being received, but then also how your journey is looked at after the fact.
Yeah, I would, I don't think any of those, I wouldn't put much weight into the story that it was just like oh, he vibe coded us, no, they had the upper hand when they decided to take that project on.
Yeah,
I think that's how the history book should reflect it.
Yeah. So so they ended up
but
so they ended up their Altair basic story is the founding myth of Microsoft, and it's real. That's what my notes say here. And they saw this magazine over 8 weeks and had written a working interpreter for a machine they never touched. The Bluff to Roberts, the bootstrap loader on the plane, and it's all about speed, audacity, and the conviction that software was the thing that mattered. And that is a big thing to note too, is that,
what's that?
They were moving, when they started Microsoft is a software company.
Yeah.
And it's the first real software company of its kind. And what they saw was that with the personal computing revolution beginning to happen, that there was this opportunity to wedge themselves in between the user and the hardware.
Right.
And that alone right there created the money machine that was about to come after that, where they were able to not only come up with software that could run on the hardware, on different sets of hardware, but they were able to build a business around that through owning the software, licensing it, and coming up with different licensing deals.
Which is like your first ever real SaaS company, software as a service.
Yeah.
Under that licensing model is like one of the few, definitely one of the early examples of SaaS.
Yeah, they say that one of the critical things in this whole development was that he licensed Altair Basic to MITS with the crucial term that MITS could distribute it, but Microsoft retained ownership.
Right.
And the licensing model will become the foundation of the Microsoft empire.
Yeah, which is the Altair one was the first one, and then obviously the MS-DOS was the big one.
Yeah,
with
which was the same play that they did with Altair Basic.
Right.
And that's super crucial because there was a time, and I don't remember the story exactly, but there was a time where they, like one of the companies, I think it was MITS, ended up folding, or something like that. But there was something in question around the specific term of the agreement, where they talked about ownership. One was that they said we own it, and he was very, very specific about that. But then there was another aspect of it where they talked about how they would retain the ability to license as long as they sold it with the best efforts.
Oh, really?
And it's like these little terms that Bill Gates was very, very adamant on keeping in the contract.
Yeah.
Is what allowed them to exercise their leverage and power later to be able to grow the actual monetary aspect of the business.
I know that from the IBM deal with MS-DOS, that they bought a DOS system for like 75 grand very shortly before they did the IBM deal. The IBM deal was a multi-billion-dollar deal, and they had bought another OS system months before, and then just basically swapped it out for their own version of it.
Yeah.
And then sold that to IBM under that same model of, hey, every PC you sell will have an image of MS-DOS on it, which then went to the IBM's entire market. But it's very interesting. Also like the kind of business dealings you do, and then because IBM could have just paid 75 grand for that, but instead they licensed it from Microsoft.
Yeah.
So
and
very
then,
interesting.
And they also had so he said, you can license it, but we also retain the right to go and distribute it ourselves.
Right.
And then come up with other different, but we have an exclusive deal with, like,
it's a one-way exclusive deal.
Yeah. I mean, this dude was doing like 360 deals, a la the Barry Gordy shit. But in the software space.
Yeah.
And it's really important. I think people underestimate how much of a business mind Bill Gates was. Larry Ellison, another founder that we've looked at on Founders Drive, would talk about how a lot of people would compare Bill Gates to Thomas Edison, the inventor, but he was more like Rockefeller in the sense that he was trying to create this monopoly, and he was doing it through ruthlessly precise business contracts and business dealings to get ahead, and had no shame in that.
Yeah.
In fact, he liked it.
Yeah, I think he thrived off of it.
Yeah.
But where does that put us on the timeline? Because if we're doing the IBM deal, that's right at like.
Yeah. Well, I have this is in the 80s, 81.
Yeah. I mean, this made him the world's first, your world's youngest self-made billionaire.
Yeah.
At 31.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Insane. So we have some notes here. It goes, the IBM deal, the most important deal in tech history. IBM was secretly developing a personal computer, Project Chess. It needed an operating system. This is what you're talking about. IBM initially went to Digital Research to license the dominant operating system at the time, but the meeting with Gary Tidal fell apart. The details are disputed. Legend says Tidal went flying instead of taking the meeting. IBM then turned to Microsoft, and then this is another thing too, talking about connections.
Yeah.
Is Mary Maxwell Gates served on the United Way board alongside John Opel, then the chairman of IBM.
Right.
She mentioned her son's company to Opel when...
Just offhandedly.
Yeah. I mean, right here.
We have IBM and Microsoft,
And when IBM was evaluating Microsoft, Oval told executives that Microsoft was a company run by Bill Gates, Mary Gates' son. The connection didn't seal the deal, but it definitely opened doors.
We are living through warm connections and warm intros right now, and they make a difference.
They make a difference.
They definitely make a difference.
And you have to know how to exercise them. And you have, I mean, this was his mother, so she was trying to make that happen. But it's also important to look at the people that you have around you. Sometimes that deal that you're looking to get, whatever industry you're on, whatever, whether you're starting to start a company or a business, you should be, or you're trying to get another job, they're going away. But, you know, but exercising your network is your net worth, because not just because of who's in your immediate circle, but the people that are 2-3 degrees down.
Yeah, because the definition of networks.
Yeah.
You're at the most, at the very most maximum, you're 6 degrees away from changing your entire life.
Yeah. So it's being
like your entire life. Probably generational.
Yeah. 100%.
You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of change that we're talking about, and you're about 6 degrees away from it at any given time in your life.
Yeah, and the fact that you can even do that through, I mean, we have social media now, so we're like connected in ways that we just weren't before. Reaching out to people, talking with people, engaging with people. The irony is that we're so advanced right now that we don't even realize it.
And more people are falling into that doom scrolling habit where they just sit there and consume, and they're not producing, they're not showing the world who they are.
Yeah, they're NPCs.
That's right.
Yeah, so
don't be an NPC.
Don't be an NPC. So Paul Allen, so they didn't have the opportunity system yet, and so then they ended up flipping that, and they bought the full rights to. So this, I just want to get into the actual.
They bought, I think US dollars for $75,000.
Yeah, yeah. They bought it for $75,000 here. I'm just looking to see the terms if they had it here. Oh. So yeah, so IBM wanted to buy this operating system outright. Gates refused. He proposed that IBM pay a licensing fee for each copy sold with IBM's PCs, and then
revolutionary.
Yep. And crucially, the agreement was non-exclusive. So I want you to be my girlfriend, but I'm not your boyfriend.
Exactly. It's a one-way exclusive deal. It's a one-way open relationship. It's interesting. Some people have that, they don't even know about it.
So Microsoft retained the right to license MS-DOS to other PC manufacturers. Gates correctly predicted the IBM PC clones would flood the market, and every clone needed an operating system. Every operating system license went through Microsoft. IBM paid a low per copy fee, thinking it was getting a good deal. Microsoft got an annuity on the entire personal computer industry.
It's insane.
I mean, that is a stroke of genius. Yeah, and
it's a play right there.
And so it's combining the technology expertise with the awareness of how to facilitate that deal, because you're a kid interacting with your mom's friend who's a connection, or colleague who's a connection, who's also the CEO of IBM.
Right.
And you're saying, nah, we're not going to do that. Put that in the contract. And saying, no, we're going to do a non-exclusive deal between us. And then actually saying, all right, well, we're going to go and do that.
It's wild. I also think like IBM,
chutzpah, you know,
IBM's definitely kicking themselves. Like, why did we just develop our own OS? Like, why are we paying these guys a licensing fee? Like, I understand it to some degree, but you know, IBM definitely did not have the same success that Microsoft had, even though they were the ones distributing every single personal computer in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, it's mind blowing when you to actually exercise the deal. I think is what becomes really intriguing there. But yeah, like not inventing the operating system, buying it, and then licensing it. So buying it, flipping it in a way that let him sell it to the entire world through his mom's connection that opened the door. That's
one of the pivotal moments in Microsoft's history.
Yeah, and software just in general, because he was really upset early on about how with the Altair software, a lot of people just ripped it. They're like, we're not paying for this shit. Yep. And he wrote letters to people saying, I think you should pay me for it.
Yeah.
And some people sent money back, but
most people wouldn't.
Yeah, and most people didn't. They were like, yeah, we're not.
You wouldn't download a car? Yes, I would. those old 90s
but yeah, him and Steve Jobs, there's a lot of parallels there between them. Like, they really thought that software was worth something, and I think it is too. I mean, it's intellectual 100%. Property. It's mental energy was spent building it and creating a program for people to be able to follow in an automated way.
Yeah.
So then this is them building the empire, and I think we can kind of just maybe go through this little part of it, and then we can cap it, and maybe we revisit the second half of Bill Gates' stuff after. So at this point, Paul Allen left in '83. He had Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Yep.
And he left the day-to-day work at Microsoft, but remained on the board as a vice chairman. Allen later alleged in his memoir, Idea Man, that Gates and Ballmer had tried to dilute his equity stake while he was ill. The relationship between Gates and Allen was never fully repaired, though they remained cordial. I don't put it past that. I mean, it seems like a really Bill Gates.
What a terrible thing to do, though.
Yeah, I mean, your co-founder gets cancer,
and you're trying to cut him out of the business.
Yeah.
If anything, you kind of want him to be there so that you can protect more of
the
ownership, because he's in it for your and his best interests.
Yeah, and I also think it's just it's just a slimy thing to do.
Terrible thing, and it's proven by the fact that Ballmer came and apologized after.
Yeah,
he showed up and apologized for what had happened. It's like, dog, like that proves that, hey, this actually did happen and there was a problem with it. Obviously there was, but yeah, I don't know. That was a really, I think, crappy thing to do.
No, I think it's terrible. Steve Ballmer, Farmington Hills native.
That's true.
Yeah, he went to Country Day, and then he also
developers.
developers. Now he owns the Clippers, which is super dope too. And then Paul Allen owned his son. He owned the.
He did own a team.
No, he owns the Trailblazers and the Seattle Seahawks, and his wife now
owns those. Oh, gotcha.
And the Seahawks just won the championship.
Oh wow! Yeah. So, I mean, he was also one that enjoyed his wealth very much.
Yeah. He had a ton of interests outside of just computing, but was also whip smart, 1600 on his ACT.
Yes.
Or SATs, and just a brilliant person. But at this point, this was in so Paul Allen left this is still the 80s. There's the whole Apple GUI controversy in the Windows development. Apple launched the Macintosh in January 1984 with a graphical user interface. Both Apple and Microsoft had drawn inspiration from Xerox's Xerox PARC's pioneering GUI work. Microsoft had been developing Windows since 1983 before Gates had ever saw the finished Macintosh. When Steve Jobs discovered Windows, he summoned Gates to Apple headquarters for what Gates called a command performance. Jobs shouted, "You're ripping us off. I trusted you, and now you're stealing from us." Gates' famous retort was, "Well, Steve, I think there's more than one way of looking at it. I think it's more like we both had this rich neighbor named Xerox, and I broke into his house to steal the TV set and found out that you had already stolen it."
Yeah. So it's but okay, that doesn't absolve either party from breaking into somebody else's house to steal their IP. Yeah. He's openly saying this stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously it's
it's so funny when you think about it. Steve Jobs throwing his tantrum, you stole from me, and him being well, I didn't steal from you, I stole from them.
It's hilarious. But it also shows the business, how ruthless people are in business.
Yeah.
You don't have to be that ruthless. I think there's a ruthlessness that comes with some of the decisions you make. But, I don't know, openly getting mad that somebody's copying off of you after you copied off of someone else.
Yeah.
A la Anthropic, ChatGPT.
Yeah, you see it all.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's still happening. That's a good call. That's still happening today. They scraped all of Reddit's data, and now they're suing everybody that tries to take or copy anything from them.
Yeah, it's wait a second, you can't do this. You're sitting on stolen land.
Well, I think it kind of shows you, though, if we're being really honest, about the way the world works and the way a lot of business works. It doesn't have to work that way. I think there's plenty of examples to the contrary, but it shows you the nature of the terrain that you're dealing with, and just seeing that and being aware of it, I think, is really crucial.
Yep.
So John Scully signed a deal with Microsoft on November 21, 1985, licensing the Macintosh's visual displays to Microsoft for use in Windows 1.0, decision that haunted Apple for years. Apple later sued Microsoft for copyright infringement in 1988, but lost in 1994. This is when they also started developing the Microsoft Office suite, which is still around today.
Yeah.
Microsoft Word was first released in spring of 1983. Microsoft Excel launched in 1985, first for Macintosh, then for Windows.
That's wild.
And then Microsoft Office Suite, introduced in 1989 to 1990. It included Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. Office became the de facto standard for business productivity and other platform lock-in. And another thing to highlight is early on, I believe it was Bill Gates, it was, I think, one or two other salespeople, and 28 developers.
Yeah.
They didn't take any VC.
Right.
And it was Bill Gates making these calls and getting contracts to say, hey, we have software. We want you to have a license with our software. We want you have hardware. We have software. I want to work out a contract agreement, and then finding all of these opportunities where he could lock in Microsoft at an early time. And so he spent a lot of time on the business side. Of course, his passion is in programming, but he really took on the onus to go and say, hey, how do I go and get this in different places?
Yeah, 100%. And that Office suite has only been rivaled by Google, up till recently.
Yeah,
they've been the powerhouse for office productivity for better part of 3 decades.
Yeah.
And Google's just now starting to come out with the suite of tools that can rival it.
Yeah, they started with the 80s, dominated the 90s and the 2000s, and then in the 2010s is when the Google products started to come out, but didn't really hold a candle to
not the start.
Office.
Not at the start they didn't. I think now in the 2020s they are.
Well, they came out with Google Docs when I was still in college.
Exactly. Yeah, it just wasn't that good.
Yeah, and it was oh, are we using this? I guess it's kind of convenient because it's online, but it sucks. But now it is starting to be something where
I would prefer it, actually.
Yeah, me too. But yeah, they were known for a very combative, intellectually aggressive debate type culture.
Yes.
He would pick fights with people.
Yes.
And that he had a streak of that even when he was younger and they were doing work with MITs. He was the CEO of MITs at the time was just bemused by how much he would engage with fights and these sparring sessions. And of course, he was intellectually ahead of a lot of people.
Yeah.
He put in his work and he continued to put his work in, and I think he looked for every opportunity to pick a fight with somebody, sometimes for the good, sometimes for the an ego trip.
It's a tool that should be very seldomly used as a leader.
Yeah, well, if you're
know what I mean?
Yeah,
you just should not be defaulting to who am I going to pick a fight with today. It's one of those classic, boss leadership kind of paradigms where you start walking around the office and everyone just kind of it's I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to. You get this feeling of anyone who's watched The Office has this Robert California vibe of you never know if he's going to talk to you, and if he is going to talk to you, what he's going to say. Yeah. And so everyone kind of just cowers away from you.
Yeah, one of his famous lines, Bill Gates' famous lines was, "This is the most stupid fucking idea I've ever seen." Why would you ever say that?
Said that multiple times to multiple different people on multiple different occasions. Yeah. It became his tagline.
Yeah. So, but I think to a degree, he treated himself like that. Yeah. Internally, when he got things wrong, he was like, "How am I such an idiot?"
Yeah.
So he had that in his head, but he I think again he kind of walked with a big stick and he used it on people.
Which is being a billionaire at 31 and then still having that, I think there is something to say about the veracity and the tenacity to keep chasing that stuff even after you've made $1 billion at 31. But it's also you gotta figure out how you treat people in the long term, because that's also how people are gonna remember you.
Yeah, well, I think it'll always come back to haunt you.
Yeah.
So employees described him as notorious for not being reachable by phones and not returning phone calls. The culture rewarded raw intellectual horsepower and rewarded those who could withstand Bill Gates' withering criticism. They went public in 1986 at $21 per share. By the end of the day, the stock had risen to $35 per share. The first thing he did with his money is he bought a Porsche 959, and he couldn't legally drive on U.S. roads due to
that was not a legal car.
Yeah.
And he imported it anyway. Another example of him bending the rules.
Becoming a billionaire 1 year after the IPO, the stock had risen enough to make Gates the youngest self-made billionaire in history. Forbes listed his net worth at 1.25 billion, and in their first richest Americans issue.
I like how that. I'm so much into cars, and we're on a drive that like I love how that story is glossed over.
Mhm.
How he has so much money and influence that he can illegally import things.
That's actually kind of crazy.
Think about that. If I said, "Yeah, I'm going to illegally import something,"
Yeah, we're just gonna import cocaine. Like,
yeah, just it could be anything.
Yeah.
Because you know that it doesn't matter what was in that crate. They didn't check it because if they did, they would have denied it. You know what I mean? Like it's very obvious that he's illegally importing something.
Well, I'm gonna hold back on how far we could take this illegal importation joke, because he is going through some shit with a
Sure.
famous guy named Epstein right now.
But you can see the
Who
infrastructure laid in the 80s.
And I can import what I want.
Exactly.
And I can move things what I want without.
It's such a glossed over story.
Yeah.
But
I
that's a
mean-
lot of influence, all that connections. You pay off the right people. Don't look in that crate. Could be anything in that crate.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
I know,
that's
man.
just something that I wanted to key in on.
No, I think it's important to key in on that. And I think it's like when you get to that altitude, you have to be very cognizant of your actions, because very few people will check it, especially if you have, that type of money.
If you're making it in their interest, you're paying
Yeah.
them off, and like, of course they're not going to check.
Even then, it's like, even then, like, people see that they know it, and so
Yeah,
they'll
yeah.
do it on. They'll be preemptive about doing things in your favor, and you think that's just how people are.
Oh,
You
that's an interesting one.
And so you kind of have to watch how you're moving on yourself and hold yourself accountable, because reality gets distorted. And I think that,
Yeah. Yeah, we just
Yeah.
leave it at that.
yeah. So Windows 3.0 was released in 1990, 3.1 in 1992. Once Windows dominated the Windows versions of the Microsoft applications, once they dominated the Office suite, they then started to dominate other applications. And the platform flywheel, they control the OS, control the apps that run on it, and then control what the user engages with. And one of the famous stories is how they ended up putting out Internet Explorer. And I think he even said that Netscape, another browser at the time, was a better browser, but
Yeah.
they just didn't have the operating system. And so,
Exactly.
what are you going to do?
Yeah, it's the start of those monopolistic
Mhm.
tendencies
Yeah.
that Microsoft tended to do and got in trouble for
Mhm.
a little bit, I would say, not a lot.
And so we'll kind of round it out with
Yeah.
the 90s era right here, and we'll stop at the antitrust suit.
Okay.
So we have the 1990 to the 2001. The Windows 95 launch was in August 24, 1995, the biggest product launch in technology history at that time.
It was also my first operating system.
That's true. You were 95. I was Windows 3.0. That's 3.1 is me. 'Cause I came out of 92.
I actually used Windows 95.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've ever actually used 93.
No, I've
But
yeah, 3.1.
3.1?
No, I had a what's it called, version of it,
Okay.
but no, I haven't like actually fired it up a bit. A virtual machine.
Sure.
But the so 95 launch,
Huge
Yeah.
launch.
Yeah.
One of the best televised launches too. If you guys have time, watch that video. It's a
Mhm.
really cool, go live, go to market
Yeah.
video happened in the 90s.
They spent $300 million on advertising and promotion for it.
Yeah.
Licensed the Rolling Stones' "Start Me Up" for approximately $3 million. The song "Start Me Up" chorus matched the Windows 95 start button. Jay Leno hosted the launch event in Redmond for 12,500 employees. Live satellite broadcasts in 42 U.S. cities and world capitals. The Empire State Building was lit Microsoft's colors. It took a crew of 200 over 20 days to set up the event. Windows 95 sold 7 million copies in the first 5 weeks. Content is King essay. This is a pretty prescient essay.
Yes.
He wrote this essay, Content is King, in 1996, and specifically said in there, "Content is where I expect much of the real money will be made on the internet, just as it was in broadcasting." He predicted video on demand, ebooks, the interactive content decades before they became mainstream. This is where Gary Vee got his whole spiel, content. But it's also, the foundation for what we're talking about is being able to monetize virtually through content.
Yeah.
So of course people just publish content, and that's been the story for the last couple decades. But we're now in a space right now where we're saying people will be starting businesses around that idea of that the main way people will be making money is by starting businesses around the content that they produce, and that's what content is fulfilling. That's the market that we're fulfilling.
100%.
So a lot of that is, you know, calling back to that this essay that he wrote. And when you go back and read it, you're like, oh, okay, this is pretty spot on.
Futuristic.
Yeah.
And really, if you look at it in terms of today, I think it hits a lot of marks.
Oh yeah, 100%. And so there was the internet tidal wave memo in 1995. He wrote a 3,000-word internal memo on Microsoft. It's Microsoft's executive staff saying the internet is a tidal wave. It changes the rules. It is an incredible opportunity as well as an incredible challenge. Assigned the internet the highest level of importance. Cited Netscape's 70% browser market share as an existential threat, which is when they introduced Internet Explorer. And Lord knows Internet Explorer has been the bane of so many developers' existence
Right.
for so long. The memo pivoted Microsoft's entire strategy towards the internet. Browser wars started with Netscape. Netscape Navigator had dominated the early browser market. Microsoft launched Internet Explorer, bundled it for free with Windows. They just undercut them. Bundling strategy was devastating to Netscape. Why would anyone buy a browser? People used to buy the browser.
Exactly.
The guy who said, you know, don't give your software away for free unless you're doing it to just destroy another company.
Yep.
Microsoft pressured PC manufacturers and ISPs to promote Internet Explorer over Netscape. By 1999, Internet Explorer had captured over 90% of the browser market. The only browser that really survived that was Safari.
Yeah, surviving it, limping through it, you know, one of those two.
But I only say that because they owned the Apple hardware.
Yeah, I mean, like, IE is still around. Edge now. I think it's probably the same as Safari in terms of its capabilities. I think everyone that, you know, is either on a newer AI version of, like, Perplexity or Google Chrome is one of the major ones, you know.
But I think the main thing that I'm pointing at is you had to be a vertically integrated company to be able to stand a chance.
That's true.
In surviving that terrain, and even now it's the Safari's built into the Apple browsers, and so there's the iPhones. So this last little, you know, stretch right here that we're going to be going over is Forbes was named the world's richest person for the first time in 1995 with a net worth of $12.9 billion. He held that title for 18 of 24 years between 1995 and 2017, including 13 consecutive years from 1995 to 2007.
That's insane.
I think that paralleled almost, well, not quite, but it somewhat paralleled Tiger Woods' reign of being the #1 golfer for that amount of time.
Gotcha. And I think you said 12 million or 12 billion?
12 billion in 1995.
Okay.
His net worth peaked above 100 billion in 1999. The first person in history to reach that threshold.
$100 billion.
Yeah. And then
in the 90s too.
Yeah, right. And so then this era caps off with the United States versus Microsoft. That went on from 1998 to 2001. The DOJ filed its antitrust complaint on May 18th, 1998. Trial began on October 19th, 1998 in DC before Judge Thomas Penfield Jackson. And in 1999, November 5th, Judge Jackson issued findings of facts declaring that Microsoft enjoys monopoly power in the PC operating systems market. In 2000, Jackson issued conclusions of law. Microsoft had violated sections 1 and 2 of the Sherman Antitrust Act through monopolization, attempted monopolization, and tying. And in June 7th, 2000, Jackson ordered Microsoft to be broken into 2 companies, one for the operating system and one for everything else.
Obviously, I think they appealed that, right? Because they're not 2 different companies.
So then it goes the appeal and settlement. Yep.
Yeah.
And then you have the appeal and settlement. DC Circuit Court of Appeals unanimously reversed the breakup order. The court agreed Microsoft had violated antitrust law, but found Judge Jackson had committed serious judicial misconduct through extrajudicial comments.
Yeah.
That conduct is just so wrong. Microsoft settled with the DOJ, no breakup, but required to share APIs and allow PC manufacturers to install competing software. The settlement was widely criticized as too lenient. And yeah, I mean, during the whole time in Gates' deposition, he was notoriously evasive, argumentative, combative, quibbled over the meanings of common words like compete, concerned, ask, we. What do you mean by we? But honestly, it's like in those situations, I'm not even gonna harper too much on the deposition.
Right.
It is a very
combative environment.
Yeah, but it does, show that the power that Microsoft had. Imagine that they never had to open up the APIs and allow other people to install their software.
Might be just like Apple today.
It might be just like Apple today. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean that was an era, and after that we start looking at the foundation era.
Get to the philanthropic
stuff. And we'll save that for another time. But no, there's a lot with Bill Gates, and his story's not over. He has a lot going on right now, and we'll save that for another episode, another drive.
Yeah, no, this was great. I think Microsoft specifically changed so much about the world that we enjoy today.
Yeah.
And so I really enjoyed doing a little bit of deep dive on Bill Gates.
Yeah, me too.
All right.
See you in the Super Secret.
Yeah, check us out next week for another Founder on Founders Drive.
Peace.